The 28 teams competing in the very first round-the-world air race chose to take off from Geneva under the authority of the Swiss National Air Club and the International Aeronautic Federation. All motorsports events have their rules and regulations. Air races are no exception from the rule. So as soon as they landed, each and every team had to submit to the organization's tests. Nothing can be left unchecked. Going over the licenses, the visas, the survival gear, the navigation equipment, and controlling the conformity of the extra fuel tanks, as well as every plane's official papers. The route this aeronautical speed race follows is a grand premiere. It circles the whole of the northern hemisphere, crossing over Russia from west to east, all of North America, Greenland, and finally ending up in Cannes on the French Riviera. Matthias Stinn and Heinz Bitterman, the Canadian team of North Wind, are prepping their Glacier 3 prototype as if it were a real Formula One race car. Each drop of fuel, every speck of dirt on the fuselage or the propeller may have direct and final consequences on the plane's performance. Barbella Bella is giving up hope of ever seeing her plane come in.
I'm extremely unhappy that I'm late with my plane. It had been promised to me since a long time, since months. But it is a bomber, 50 years old, a Douglas Invader A26, and technically there were some things wrong that were difficult to repair. It will arrive in Helsinki and I will join the race from there. It's a lovely plane and I love to fly it, but hopefully not all is lost.
So it's 27 teams from 17 countries, as well as 4 staff aircraft that are to take off for the first leg of the race, Geneva-Helsinki, an opportunity for Bernard Lamy, race director, to give his instructions in the last briefing before entering the Eastern European countries. And on June 20th at dawn, Geneva, Helsinki, 2,000 kilometers, 1,250 miles. A first warm-up leg of the journey, but not without hitches, as Bernard Lamy explains.
Mother weather having obliged them all to take off in the dirty weather, it wasn't before they reached the northern parts of Germany near the Baltic Sea that they were able to break free from the airways with the help of some friendly air traffic controllers. To gain few precious seconds, they plotted out precise route, flying over the northern forest, doing what the international language of airmen calls hedge hopping.
A big crowd at Helsinki Airport to greet the local team. Finn Viking with Iro Hiromino and Raimo Mäkönen.
Kiitoksia, kiitoksia. Täällä on hyvät säät.
Wonderful flight. I think we're the last people here, though, huh?
No problem.
Well, everybody's happy. Carl Sivander and Eric Bank, one of the 2 Swedish teams, go over their journey.
But we are very satisfied, and the descent, everything went very smoothly down here to Malmö. We found that difficult point, Kaunia. You are always afraid when you switch over to VFR. That's much more complicated than any VFR flight.
Patrick Sayet speaks for the Belgian team.
We had a very good flight, a bit difficult, because when we took off from Geneva, we had a sudden drop of power in the engine. We lost some 100 revs that we were never able to recover. that comes out to a loss of about 5 knots. So to get some of it back when we came out of the bad weather, we flew very, very low. We nearly had a head-on collision with a flying fish. We really did everything we could to get the plane to its best speed. I think we managed okay, but I do believe this was a stage that was best for high-altitude planes, like the turboprops.
Marion Jane and Nancy Palazzola, both American, have taken the lead in the race. Mother and daughter are congratulated here by Olavi Ratio, the president of the International Aeronautic Federation. Leading the turboprop plane category is the French team of Didier Canler and Claude Le Prince. At the very northern tip of Europe is Finland, with its island capital, Helsinki. So if you wind up there on the very first day of summer, as the competitors of the round-the-world air race did, don't be surprised to see everybody washing their rugs. This is the longest day of the year, and the rugs will have enough time to dry. The first hitch in the race is for the Austrian team, Erwin Linter and Harold Passiker, who have to repair a wheel that was damaged while landing. And here they demonstrate how you can turn old into new with just a little technology. Helsinki-Moscow, 900 kilometers, 550 miles. A very short leg of the journey, but this is where the real problems start. You must remember that in Russia, all altitudes are expressed in meters, whereas in the rest of the world they're measured in feet. So all the teams have to carry around little conversion tables to interpret between the Russian air traffic controllers and their flight instruments. To top it all, there's a real communication problem over the radio between American English and the Russian-flavored English. At Ravskoye Airport, it's panic time in the control tower. The Russian air traffic controllers, with help from the organization's technicians, see some 30 planes rushing toward them, each one trying to outfly the other. Facing this oncoming wave that in old days would have set off the red alert, Ravskoye Airport makes a very good decision. This secret test flight base outside Moscow has a runway measuring some 3 miles long by 330 feet wide. To compare, the runways at the main French airport of Charles de Gaulle are 3.5 kilometers, or some 2.25 miles. The Russian air traffic controllers land the planes 2 at a time without the slightest problem. A moving moment for all the competitors who taxi through 300 top secret airplanes that have never been photographed before except by the Secret Service. And it's a very special moment for the 11 American crews, who are completely bowled over by the traditional Russian greeting.
Welcome to Russia. Oh. We're very happy to see you in our country.
Thank you very much.
Taste it. It's our national food. It's bread with salt. Take a piece of bread and then put it into the salt. And then taste it.
Oh, thank you.
So nicely.
I've heard of this. Very good. Thank you.
He should taste bread and salt, and then he understands that the house where he comes is very beautiful, very good, and people who live there are very kind.
We feel very welcome, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Have a good flight.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Yes, alors qu'est-ce qu'on fait?
Le pain, oui. On le met dans le sel. Oui. Tu goûtes. Et c'est meilleur pour le pain de célèbre. Ça veut dire que tu aimes maintenant la Russie. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Bread and salt, and some papers to be filled out in Russian later on. A quick musical visit of Moscow. A trip to the Monino Museum, the Soviet aircraft cemetery, where the famous Sukhoi T-4 bomber lies. It flew at Mach 3 and cost more than its weight in gold. The hardest part begins here. Bernard Lamy, race director, briefs the competitor.
The atmosphere is very tense. The teams are getting ready for 2,700 miles over the Siberian Pampa, and the GPS are razor-edge sharp. As for the Russian air controller, they are wondering what's going on. They are used to Russian crews, which always have a navigator and can't imagine how we are going to manage.
How many hours in flight? 8 hours, then 7 hours after.
The problem we had this morning, that we didn't have the clearance. They will come to your plane and say, contact the tower. Okay. One by one. Okay?
The pilots and crew aren't at all comfortable about what's in store for them, and they board their planes with uneasy stomachs to take off for the longest leg of the race, a lot longer than crossing the United States from coast to coast, and a lot more difficult because there are no radio beacons here to get a fix on. Moscow-Irkutsk, 4,300 kilometers, 2,700 miles, to reach the heart of Siberia with one very important unknown factor, fuel. Arc-en-Ciel had to buy 20,000 gallons of fuel and have it transported from northern Scotland to Moscow, and from Moscow to the different Siberian refueling points. The first stop is Omsk. At Omsk Airport, it's a day to celebrate, and just about everybody seems to be there. Whew. The fuel got here, but has to be checked immediately for water contamination.
What's the danger of water? If it gets into the carburetor, the engine stops, or the whole thing seizes up. It's bothersome.
So since the fuel has arrived and the security guards are here, and since the spectators are all ready, the show can begin.
Oh mais hey, t'as le temps de pisser, mais tu nous débarrasses le parking et puis tu vas pisser où tu veux, hein. Allez, ça doit être bon là.
6 minutes, that's the record time for refueling and preparing a plane. This infernal ballet goes on till very late at night, when suddenly the Canadian team that had refueled just an hour ago comes back. Their engine had quit and then started up again. Facing the danger of having to make an emergency landing in the Siberian tundra in the middle of the night, Matthias Stind decides to wait for daybreak.
Hang on a sec, we're coming up.
In Irkutsk, the Welsh Dragon bent a wing.
When he turned, he followed the little car instead of following our indications, and he hit the bus and broke it here. The problem is that he broke the small part here that holds the gas tank on. We're going to have to repair it. It can't fly like that. It's not possible.
After this leg of the journey, the general result positions are completely changed. Hors ligne, Bruno Kepler and Nicolas Poncet's Swiss team's Cheyenne 3 has taken a great leap toward victory, as well as the lead in the turboprop category. The gaps have widened in the piston plane category. Now 5 hours and 49 minutes separate North Wind, which stopped at Omsk, and the leader, Spirit of Rochester. That's 45 minutes ahead of the two American ladies aboard Tailwind's World Flyer. Irkutsk is the birthplace of the first man to circle the Earth in space, Yuri Gagarin. We are in the very heart of Siberia, on the shores of the deepest lake in the world, Lake Baikal. It alone counts for 25% of the Earth's stock of fresh water. But the walk along the lake in the mild Siberian summer will drain the last bit of strength from the tired bodies. Well, not for very long.
You are military pilot. Yes?
No,
No.
we're from America.
Next morning, an abrupt change of scenery. The planes have to be refueled under pouring rain, and in Siberia, the organization and equipment are sometimes not quite up to snuff. We're very far from the 6 minutes it took in Omsk. The planes must go by the fuel pumps one by one. A long line forms and turns into a traffic jam. The Russian Weather Service had forecast good weather for the departure. That kind of good weather will be remembered by the technicians of the Arc-en-Ciel Association as a glimpse of Siberian hell. Irkutsk, Yakutsk, 1,900 kilometers, 1,200 miles, heading northeast toward the Arctic Circle. On board the Welsh Dragon, that's been repaired by Hubert Rowe, the race's mechanic, John Powell and Thomas Perry Johns programmed their GPS. That's the little box which, all by itself, processes the data received from 5 satellites and gives you your precise location, to the foot, as well as the strength of the wind, your estimated arrival time, and a whole pile of other information. The weather turned out to be the exact opposite of what the Russians had forecast. The good weather that was supposed to be at the start turned out to be waiting on arrival. But another surprise awaited the competitors as Yakutsk Airport came into sight. The air traffic is very heavy at this airport, and the 27 competing planes had to slip in between the regular cargo plane landings and takeoffs. To make things worse, the person who authorizes the landings is not in the control tower and cannot see the planes. Many of them had to fly around once before being able to land. One of those was the TBM Spirit of Austria. When he finally lands, perhaps he could be a little upset. He won't be the only one to have a bumpy landing. Here's the possible explanation of David Beechcroft Kay and Tony Hannum from the Tradigrand team.
This is the Hong Kong team.
With a flat tire.
And we seem to have a bit of a bad tire.
We taxied in and noticed it when we stopped, but it looks like at some stage the brake has been on at high speed. And with the little wheels, there's a tendency for the wheels to hit any rough patches and just stop. Instead of the big wheels are much better. They tend to roll over any roughness. The little wheels tend to get a bit.
I think the runway here is not the smoothest, and I think perhaps at the time that we touched a bad spot, a rough spot, maybe the brakes were touched on at that time, and as a result, it scrubbed. C'est la vie.
Faith Hillman and Sue Neely had other problems to contend with.
Well, our airplane does not have de-icing equipment, and we asked for low altitude. So instead of allowing us to cross the mountains, they sent us far away from the mountains. They told us yesterday that this was the woman's route. It was much better for a woman to go away. Woman girl. Yeah.
Woman girl, he said.
It's better to go away from the mountains. So we said no, but today we had no choice because they told us we would go there.
The American ladies aren't happy. How about the Frenchman, Jean Balthazar?
Yes, it went very well, but the wind held us back a bit. To avoid the frost and the ice, we went up high. And the higher we went, the more wind there was against us. Did you think you wouldn't make it? Yes. Once I thought we were lucky to have full tanks. As for the others, we heard someone, I don't know who was scared. They called for help because they didn't know if they were going to make it here with this head-on wind. Those things happen. So, you were lucky? Oh, you know, we're already lucky enough to take part in the race.
Lucky perhaps, but also you have the pleasure of being under the midnight sun. Have you ever heard about permafrost? Well, the ground freezes completely for dozens of feet down and then only thaws for a few feet in summer, turning all the roads and land into one big mud pile. It's impossible to bury water pipes, and the houses have to be built on stilts, or they collapse when the thaw comes. Anyhow, Yakutsk is a beautiful city, and as Bernard Lamy says, 50 million mosquitoes can't be wrong. The lead positions have not changed, but the French Aero-Pyrénées team, in 7th position with their Piper twin Comanche, open a debate over the performances of the American ladies in the Tailwind World Flyer, who are in 2nd position, using the same plane as the French.
It's a twin Comanche piloted by pros, that's for sure. But it has a little something extra that is difficult to evaluate, and that is difficult to make up for when you're alongside. Meaning it goes 10 knots faster, and it's hard to see how.
Yakutsk, Anadyr, 2,700 kilometers, 1,700 miles, the last stopover before the United States. The Chacotunes team, Didier Canler and Claude Le Prince, push their turbines as hard as they can to keep their second place in the turboprop group. It's the engine's best performance at recommended factory speed that makes the difference between the contestants. Choosing the best routes, the best altitudes, finding the most favorable winds to avoid landing to refuel. That's what the pilots look for when they're only seconds apart after a few thousand miles. The winds must have been favorable that day because there weren't many planes stopping in for fuel at Magadan Airport.
Okay.
While the little Siberian children dream of becoming adventurous pilots, David Hamilton, president of the jury sent by the International Aeronautic Federation to supervise the race, well, Mr. President is reliving the grand pleasure of refueling an aircraft.
Kind of cloudy, low ceiling, low ceiling. You get along the coast, and you're going to have the same thing. It's going to be a lot, the weather's going to be a lot different.
For those who took the direct route, it's full speed ahead down to Anadyr. Anadyr is the eastern gate to Russia and the end of the first part of the round-the-world race, a race that Bruno Kepler and Nicolas Poncet literally fly away with in their category of the turboprop planes. But Anadyr is mainly the turning point in the race for the positions of the piston planes. In this stage, the two American ladies, Marion Jane and Natsi Palazola, finish in the 11th position. In one go, they will lose some 50 minutes to the leaders, Robert Wall and Steve Nagoni. Despite the cold, a large crowd has gathered to meet these strange planes, so small and decked out in their flashy colors, and so sensitive to the weather. But today, one man is particularly happy.
Yeah, we're from San Francisco, California, USA, America.
Jim Nupp is the main sponsor of the race, which he's following in his own plane. He's just fulfilled the biggest dream in his life, showing the world that the Cold War is finished for good and that anyone can freely move all around the planet. Anadyr Nome is the liaison leg of the journey, 800 kilometers, 500 miles, to reach Alaska and land in the United States. Bad weather will stop most teams from seeing the Bering Straits other than on their radars. But the Bering Straits also mean crossing the 0-hour zone, a strange feeling, moving 24 hours back. You digest yesterday the sandwich that you just ate today.
Make a left at the taxiway, white truck with flashing light will lead you.
The radio interrupts this daydreaming. The precision, the flow, and the tone of voice leave no doubt to anyone that Russia is nothing but a memory now. We're in the US of A, in Nome, Alaska. Hubert de Chevigny, the man who in 1987 reached the North Pole in an ultralight, will tell us about this city.
Nome is mainly a gold rush town. Today there are 3,000 or 4,000 people in Nome, but in the gold rush days there were tens of thousands of people living on the beach, looking for gold. They all believed in it, And for 2 years, tens of thousands of people lived in tents on the beach by 40 or 50 under 0 Celsius in winter, around 40 to 60 below 0 Fahrenheit. Some of them left Nome very rich men. They'd found a lot of gold, but most of them, the great majority, 99.99%, left when they didn't die here, with less money than when they had arrived. In Nome, there's a saying, there's been more money put into the ground than has been taken out. Nome is also famous for the world's most beautiful dog sleigh race, the Iditarod. It covers 1,709 kilometers, or 1,062 miles. It's a non-stop. The clock is not stopped once during the race. It takes 10 to 12 days to cover the distance, and it leaves from Anchorage and ends here in Nome.
Nome is not the end of the world, but you can see it from here. At least that's what the locals say. It's been 11 days now since the 27 round-the-world air race teams left Geneva. They've covered 7,500 miles and still have 10,000 miles to go. But for the first time, they head off toward the south. Nome, Victoria, Canada. 3,000 kilometers, 2,000 miles, and one of the most grandiose landscapes in the world. Ilse de Vries pilots her own Bonanza, along with Jeff Moyer, her co-pilot. She's the senior lady on the team, but she has energy to burn. The media has nicknamed her Mommy Bonanza.
Don't you have enough yet? I look like the wreck of the Hesperus. It's not fair. Yes, I give him cash.
The little airport of Yakuta on the south coast of Alaska is not used to such heavy air traffic. The only fuel pump, well hidden in a little shack, is mostly used by fishermen who land on the glaciers. And soon there's a big traffic jam. Some people will lose precious minutes here. All the teams show up in Victoria, but the competition is getting more and more fierce between the contestants. Some will even go as far as identifying themselves on apparently imaginary positions in order to land faster, since the clock stops as soon as the wheels touch down. Victoria is located on the western coast of Canada, on the island of Vancouver. It's a magical place, a mixture of history and modern times. In the pure English tradition, Victoria has a penchant for lovely gardens. But here we're also in Canada, the land of the lumberjack.
Okay, that's a four.
Marion Jane and Nancy Palazzola are back at the head of the race. They left 20 minutes behind the Spirit of Rochester, but succeeded in landing 6 minutes before the other Americans. Quite a feat in the land of seaplanes. On the North American continent, the authorities have long understood that private planes are no threat to the natural environment. Gérard Pic and Marc Mosier open another debate here in front of their plane, which has been damaged by frost projected by the propellers.
The rotten weather is always on the bad side. I mean, the frost, the big storms are always on the route you don't want to take.
They're angry because the Belgian team, Crédit Communal, requested a lower flight pattern when approaching Victoria, thus stopping the Aéro-Pyrénées team from landing quicker. Patrick Saillet.
We don't overlook the slightest detail, because Gérard, with his mustache, he's been breathing down my neck. Just joking. We beat him during this last stage, so this is a decisive stage in which we aren't going to lose 1 second.
Décisif. On va pas se concéder une seconde. Alors on emploie tous les trucs.
So we're using all the little tricks allowed in the race. We've started for some time now. And when we can slip ahead, or use a priority to get through a checkpoint first, we don't hesitate. It's just like Formula One. We shut the door a bit when someone tries to nudge by.
No doubt about it, this is a real race. Victoria to Fresno, 1,300 kilometers, 800 miles over the California desert. A full-out chase over the Sierra Nevada. A large crowd greets the heroes at Fresno Airport. But in the United States, nobody gets out of the plane before the immigration officer has seen your passport. And if he's busy someplace else, well, you'll just have to wait in the parking lot.
You're gonna have to stay with the plane. We're gonna hook you up, okay? Okay. Down a little bit. Welcome to America.
Once landed in California, the Europeans discover what an American welcoming committee is all about. The sponsors have rolled out the red carpet, and the media coverage is more than adequate.
Russia.
Technical performances and the importance of having the right stuff. Bruno Kepler.
The pilot is important, but you do have to have a plane with a catalog speed that is not an illusionary figure, but a real one, as is the case with the Cheyenne.
Could some companies over-evaluate the performances of their planes just to up their sales figures? Well, luckily, not all the questions are that technical.
We've been calling this plane Air Larry for years because whenever friends would ask us if we're going someplace, we'd say, they'd say, are we flying? We said, yeah, but we're flying Air Larry because it's Larry's first name. So we just call this airplane Air Larry, and we finally put the sign on it.
Quelle est la raison de la présence de Tefal sur une telle opération?
Il y a beaucoup de raisons. Il y a d'abord des raisons d'amitié avec Bernard Lamy. On se connaît depuis longtemps. Il a travaillé pendant des années dans le groupe SEB comme directeur export et c'est lui le pionnier, j'allais dire, de l'internationalisation du groupe. Il a été avec son avion, c'est le lien d'ailleurs, il a été avec son avion vendre des poêles et des casseroles au Moyen-Orient, en Extrême-Orient. C'est lui qui a posé les jalons de l'opération américaine et canadienne et aussi de l'opération scandinave. Alors c'est une première raison historique. Il y a une raison plus actuelle, c'est que le parcours de la course couvre parfaitement notre réseau international. Le groupe SEB est un réseau international et dans tous les pays que vous avez traversés avec la course, vous avez une activité TEFAL, y compris en Russie, où nous faisons actuellement de très gros progrès au niveau de notre implantation. Il y a maintenant une troisième raison qui est la raison américaine, alors qui est beaucoup plus tournée vers notre opération US. L'opération US est très importante et nous avons fait une étude pour nous rendre compte que les gens achètent beaucoup de poêles et de casseroles TEFAL et de produits du groupe SEB, mais ne connaissent pas bien la marque TEFAL et nous avons pris le pari d'augmenter cette notoriété par des opérations grand public. Aujourd'hui, nous étendons notre distribution à la grande distribution US qu'on avait toujours mis un peu à l'écart dans les temps anciens. Et l'opération, nous prenons avantage de la course autour du monde pour aider nos clients et nos consommateurs à connaître la marque TEFAL. Actuellement à Fresno, vous avez une opération commerciale et publicitaire qui est montée où tous les gens pourront acheter des articles TEFAL et recevront en cadeau une poêle unique de collection qui a été faite spécialement pour la course elle-même.
American reception and dinner at the Fresno City Hall, where the French Senator Ernest Catigny awards the Senate Medal to the mayor of Fresno.
First of all, I would like to thank the sponsors of the race, because without them, we could not have done this adventure.
After more speeches, thanks, and congratulations later on, Bernard Lamy, race director, and all the competitors indulge in a California charm, rodeo style.
They come from Mississippi, down in Alabama, creeping like a fever all across the land. Or deep in the desert on the Louisiana shore, the people gotta have it, they wanna hear some more.
But the real surprise in Fresno is the arrival of the famous barbell bomber that nobody expected anymore. This World War II bomber is always prone to engine trouble, which doesn't help its tendency to guzzle oil. It will follow the Fresno-Washington, D.C. leg just for the fun of it. Fresno, Washington, 3,700 kilometers, 2,300 miles, a straight line across the United States and the second part of the chase. On board the Cheyenne 3, the mechanic, Georges Vincent, goes over his figures. But for Bruno Kepler, skipper of the hors ligne team, come rain, wind, or storm, there is only one route to take, and that's straight on. At Fredericks Airport, watch out, here we come. The Tradigran plane lands with a backwind at this airport with no control tower, in the opposite direction from all other planes, to keep its 5-second lead over Chukotoones. In the right direction and without a hitch, hors ligne sets down.
If they went faster than us, I don't know what we'll do. Maybe buy them some champagne.
Not as fast, but better. Spirit of Rochester comes in.
Miles and miles of thunderstorms. Yeah, we had to follow parallel. They were running east and west for about 100 miles. We had to stay to the north of them, and it worked out pretty well.
Did you refuel?
No.
No? Direct?
A per-hour average of 215 knots for a plane with a catalog speed of 191 knots. That's well worth the congratulations of the head of the top private pilots organization, the AOPA, Phil Boyer, president.
From our own pilot magazine, who just returned last Thursday. I was the first person in his office wanting to know how it went, because I would like nothing more than have to have accompanied you on this trip.
Welcome to Washington, D.C. on the 4th of July. At Fredericks Airport, while everybody prepares for his own departure, the news from Greenland forecasts disastrous weather conditions. For 3 weeks, fog has covered over Nuuk, making all landings very dangerous. The race organizers decide to stop the clock during the next leg of the trip, starting in Goose Bay, Canada. The rest of the race will have to be decided on according to the weather. Immediately, all the crews that were ready to leave for Greenland without stopping to refuel emptied the extra fuel from their tanks so as not to be unduly weighted down. The pilots of the Spirit of Rochester play it real tight. In the general classification, they're only 12 minutes ahead of the 2 American women in Tailwind's World Flyer. Washington, D.C., Nuuk. A 2,000-kilometer or 1,200-mile sprint towards northern Canada. This is the appetizer, while everyone hopes for better weather conditions over Nuuk, which used to be called Gotab. However, one team is missing on the roll call. Maya 1, the Guatemalans, had to give up in Washington, D.C. because of a compressor breakdown. Another problem awaits the organizers at Goose Bay Military Base. At this airport, mainly used by fighter planes, there's a permanent flow of kerosene, but only one small truck to dispense fuel. When the truck is empty, it drives off to the neighboring town to fill up. Once again, traffic jams and lines. The Spirit of Sweden decides to give up here and fly straight off to the end of the race in Cannes. All the other planes take off on an unclocked leg of the race. But with good news, the weather is better. And in the light of the midnight sun, the 25 remaining teams get an eyeful of the coast of Greenland. The cold northern evening did not put off the people of Nuuk as they came out in throngs to admire the planes landing on the race's most dangerous runway. Only 950 meters long, some 3,000 feet, just like landing on an aircraft carrier. All the contestants come in one by one, some with more style than others. The last to land, the Belgian team Crédit Communal, had an engine breakdown and had to land once before. Patrick Sayet tells us about it.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't find anything, and so we went on like that, and we ran into even more problems while we were flying over very desolate areas of Labrador. There was only one thing to do, turn back to reach Goose Bay. A plane flew around us to keep an eye on us as we came back. They even alerted the rescue teams, so they'd be ready to come pick us out from among the little ice cubes. Our engine was chugging along when we found the jackpot. One of the fuel tanks was severely waterlogged. I don't think it was one of the other competitors who was behind that.
Nothing better to turn your luck around than a plunge into the chilly 50-degree water. Nuke to Cannes, 4,300 kilometers, 2,700 miles, the last straight line, yet the most dangerous because most of it goes over the frozen sea, on which any landing without survival gear would mean death in less than 2 minutes. Finally, the landing at Cannes-Mandelieu Airport on the French Riviera on the morning of the 24th day of the race. The winner of the turboprop plane category is Orligne, well ahead of Chocotunes and Tradigran. Spirit of Rochester is the winner among the piston planes, apparently hands down.
No problems at all.
No
except
problems.
Except the winds.
That was one of the problems. We kept waiting for something to arise.
Unlucky that two American ladies of Tailwind's Air Flyer finished second after a last-minute problem.
Mike Tangalima. That's where I'm telling you, that's where it happened. 30 minutes from here.
30 minutes from here?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
The city of Cannes opened the doors of the Domergue Villa for a party to greet these modern heroes as they well deserve. Trophies are given out to the competitors, and Bernard Lamy and Gérard Emler both get the International Aeronautic Federation's sports medal from Monsieur Harpagos, the president of the Swiss National Air Club. Jim Nupp has the last word.
And in 1982, I wrote that I would like to fly around the world, and 10 years later, we were able to do it.
So they made it around the world. Europe, Russia, North America. All in all, 28,000 kilometers, 18,000 miles around the Northern Hemisphere.